Hey everybody, and welcome back to another devlog for Mod Masks, a VR action game I'm solo developing, heavily inspired by classics like Doom and Quake. If you've been following this devlog series on my channel, you may have noticed that I recently uploaded a small 1-minute video which I called a development trailer. The reason I'm calling it this is because it is not going to be an official trailer that you see on a game store page or anything like that. There is a semi-annual Pitcher Games contest that is geared towards helping publishers and investors find indie games that they would like to work with. I figure that even though there's still so much more I intend to do with this game, why not put something together with the best of what I do have and see what kind of trailer I can make. And also, I think that for the trailer that I do end up putting on my game store pages, it would be best that if it was not the first trailer I ever created, because even from this development test trailer, whatever you want to call it, I have received some incredible feedback from people on Reddit and Discord which I'm very appreciative about. Like for example, capturing gameplay footage well for making a trailer is an entirely different skill than programming or game design. A kick-ass trailer is super important and was one of the reasons I started a YouTube channel in the first place, to get more experience with video editing. Based on some of the feedback from the test trailer, I think I've been being dumb in terms of capturing gameplay footage even for these devlogs, so I'm going to try something different when capturing for this devlog. In order to get on the main Quest store, one of the requirements is that your game needs to run at 72 frames per second. This is considered one of the most difficult parts of Quest development because the Quest runs on Android mobile architecture. So although your game may run smoothly while testing on your PC, it can be night and day when testing on the headset. We'll get back to that in a bit, as I did spend some time since the last devlog doing my first real dive into some serious optimization, which I have plenty more to do to say the least. But what's important is that on the PC, the game runs at 72 frames per second no problem. Well, at least in this opening scene, which I did perform optimizations on. But there are definitely some frame drops and lag when combating enemies. I was getting some feedback that the trailer looked pretty laggy. I recorded all the footage on my PC to make sure there was as little lag as possible, but I feel like the results reflected a bit more lag than it should have. Well, like I mentioned before, the game is supposed to run at 72 frames per second, and after looking deeper into the settings of my screen recording software, I found that I was only capturing at 30 frames per second. Because of this, the footage being captured was skipping every other gameplay frame. Huge rookie mistake right there. But hey, now I know, and the goal of releasing that test trailer in the first place is to set a bar so my next trailer can be better, and the next one after that, and so on and so on. I'm going to set the screen capture for this video to 72 frames per second to match what the gameplay is rendering at, so please let me know down in the comments if the footage appears to be running smoother compared to previous devlogs. In terms of content of the trailer, and what I've been working on since the last devlog, I have mainly been focused on this opening scene, which is going to be the very beginning of the game, as well as the in-game tutorial. I have a list of items I want to have completed before even considering releasing an early access version of this game on itch.io or Patreon. And so now I'm shifting gears a bit and start working at the very beginning of the game, and I'm tackling features and work that needs to be done along the way as I encounter them. So let's start at the very beginning with the opening scene of the game. I first wanted to finalize who the main character was. I'm going with the floating hand style of a VR game, as I'm not that big of a fan when you can see your avatar's arms and body. I feel like I always lose my sense of immersion in those games, and fiddling with the inverse kinematics and creating the avatar would be a lot more scope added to the game for little payoff in my opinion. But still, I want this to be a single player story game. Don't expect some kind of blockbuster story or anything like that, but I still want to create some kind of cohesive world and adventure to go on. Because this game is all about putting on masks, I got this idea that at the beginning of the game, the main character has to put their helmet on. It boots up and then is addressed by the AI who is going to help direct the player throughout the game. I don't want the player to get stuck and frustrated all that much during story mission levels, so I'd like the AI voice to be a tool I can use to deliver advice, story, etc. But first we need a helmet. Well, considering the current masks I'm working with are Japanese Oni masks, I figure why not keep this Japanese theme a bit and search for a samurai robot model. While doing the search, I came across this model which I decided to purchase as I really like the helmet as well as the swords. I wish I was skilled enough in 3D modeling to create something like this myself relatively quickly, but alas, I am not, and so I decided to pick up this model to use. I really only need the head and the sword from this model. I know enough about Blender to make small changes to the models, so I just deleted everything except for the head. Now of course this model was not created for this purpose intended, so inside the helmet has no rendered faces for optimization purposes of course. Since I'm not skilled enough to create an entire inside of the helmet, I did a little hack and closed off the bottom of the helmet. Of course, this may be something I may be able to contract out to someone to make look nice, as I don't love this solution, but also this is for like 1 second of the game, so we'll see after some more Discord community tests how we feel about it. Once you put the helmet on, this initialization sequence begins, and the floating UI draws in front of the player. Now that the player has equipped the helmet, I'm hoping that it makes it so this floating UI feels like it makes some more sense, as if it's some kind of augmented reality being cast from the helmet. Because of the orange visor from the helmet model, I decided to make the default UI color orange to match this, as well as the player visor I talked about so many times, but it wasn't big enough to see in these videos. So I increased the size of that, so now that it shows in these as well. And lowering the opacity, I don't mind the size of this as much, even in game. The AI talking is the bread and butter of the UI design in my opinion. This thing was the most difficult out of all the new updates to create, but essentially the waveform lines respond dynamically to whatever audio I plug in. I voiced these lines for the test trailer as it was all I had at the time, but when I get an actual voice actor in here, whatever lines are spoken, these wave lines will respond dynamically. You can see this in the little canon joke I made at the end of the trailer when the AI is screaming and the waves go off the chart. I actually think this is pretty funny as it animates the AI character a bit more, and I hope this can work its way into the final game. The whole goal of the dynamic waveforms in the UI is to make it feel that the AI is not just a talking voice. I don't want the player to feel so alone in the single player experience, and I hope that having these dynamic waves gives the AI more characterization and feels more ingrained in the experience. The line in the test trailer, "You must be Greenhorn, I've heard a lot about you," is another way I hope to deliver the story here. I chose to call the main character in this game Greenhorn. One, because, well, the armor is green, but more importantly because the definition of Greenhorn is a person who is new to or inexperienced at a particular activity. So not only does this apply to anyone playing the game for the first time, but it could also be applied to new VR users in general. And in the story of this game, this is going to be the first mission Greenhorn is going to be sent on, hence the new subtitle, The First Assault. The AI already knows a lot about Greenhorn because he was a total badass in training, but now it's time for the first actual mission. But because the player themselves might be new to VR, I hope that the AI helping the main character as well as the player will create a more user-friendly experience. Now, as I mentioned before, performance is the most difficult part of developing quest games. And if I want this opening scene to be finalized, it needs to run at 72 frames per second on the headset. I really like the helmet and sword models, and all of these new textures I got for the walls and props, but it's all useless if it can't run at 72 frames per second. Well, when I first tried testing this on the standalone headset, my results were reading 36 frames per second. That's half of the requirement. I needed to make sure for myself that this path I'm taking is going to work out in the long run, so I needed to see what the cause was for these performance dips. As you can see, this is as simple of a scene as you can get. And after some more research, I found out that the root cause of this issue was the lighting method I was using. What I ultimately needed to do was bake a light map, meaning paint all the light you see here onto the texture so that they are not being updated in real time every frame. If an object is never ever going to move, then its shadow is never going to move. So in that case, it's a waste of processing power to have to render the light reflections and shadows of that object every frame. Of course, there are some instances where you do want light to reflect in real time, and I made some exception layers to address those, but now with just these light changes, I'm hitting at least 60 frames per second on the headset, which is enough to get the app approved on the App Lab store. I know that there are a lot more optimization techniques I need to get into, but I also need to make a game to optimize. With the way things are right now, with this scene running at 60 frames per second, I can at least feel comfortable with moving forward and trusting myself that I can optimize the final level once I know the entire scope that is needed. As I move forward, I'll continue to do these types of performance checks along the way, and if anything considered in actual levels performing at 36 frames per second, then I'll definitely be doing another deep dive into the performance ASAP in case I need to make a fundamental design change. The rest of the trailer consists of what I was hoping to be badass fight scenes. These are pretty much the exact same montages I've been showing off in the past few devlogs, except I made a copy of my sandbox development environment and just painted the areas with some new textures. Even the cave hallway is just one of the old hallways, but with rocks along the walls to give it more 3D texture. I also thought that it would be cool that in this room, where there used to be a blue block to represent water, to actually change that to lava and make the texture move as if it was lava. That was another small little detail I thought would be cool for the test trailer, but it could also have its place in the final game because gotta have a lava level. And then one final detail I've worked on that may not have been picked up in the test trailer is that whenever you equip one of the masks, not only does the UI change colors, but also the knuckles on the hands, as well as the orange details on the sword model. Again, each mask type is considered a power-up, and I hope that all these updates create a feel that the player has changed in some way. I think that's where I'm going to wrap up this devlog. I'm really happy with the progress I made since the last devlog, so I think I'm going to continue to push for the next few months and create the next devlog whenever it feels the most natural to do so. I won't be leaving you guys hanging for too long though, but the holidays are coming up, so it's hard to say if I'll release another devlog in 6 or 8 weeks, etc. And the deeper I get into the game, the more time I'm going to spend on optimizations, and so it may take longer to get enough content created to make a worthwhile devlog on. Again, I'm sure the urge to create one will happen naturally for me, just like this one did. I think the end of these devlogs are a good spot to go over some general channel updates, as I consider these devlogs to be the backbone of the channel. And if you are still watching right now, then you're one of the real ones, and I appreciate you the most. Over the holiday season, I'm going to do my best to continue to release weekly videos. At the very least, I'll upload a YouTube short video of some kind. But in between devlogs, you can expect a continued mix of VR news videos, game reviews, and accessory review videos. Of course, I may still be doing some creative exploration mixed in along the way. I've stopped counting now, but I've made like over $200 from Bone Lab, Iron Man VR, and Quest 2 headset referrals from those review videos on my channel. If you haven't seen them yet, then I'll leave links in the description below. But that money can only be used on the Quest store, of course, so I do plan on creating more videos on whatever I decide to pick up. And I want to try to create videos that will help express what kind of software is available on the Quest for a variety of users, both new and experienced. So again, more game review videos and impression videos will be along the way. And of course, leave a comment down below if there's any specific game you would like me to review. I should also have a couple more free VR accessory products on the way that I will be making review videos for, so expect those sprinkled in as well. As always, if you want to stay as up to date as possible on this VR game I'm creating on a week-by-week basis, then be sure to join the Discord channel. I do now have the ability to make community posts here on YouTube, so I'll try to remember to post some smaller updates here as well. If you're still watching this video, what are you doing, yo? Go play Modern Warfare 2 or watch another video or something. This is getting boring as hell. Like and subscribe if you want to see more content. You don't need to listen to me tell you this stuff. But for real, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.